Hari ini kita masih membicarakan mengenai pertemuan IMF dan Bank Dunia yang berlangsung di Indonesia, pertemuan tahunan berjalan dengan lancar, dan hari ini kita berkesempatan untuk berbicara langsung dengan Presiden dari World Bank Group atau Grup Bank Dunia, Yong Kim. Mr. Kim, thank you very much for your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
How are you enjoying your stay in Bali so far? Because I know that you've been here a lot of times, you've been in Indonesia a lot of times, but during the IMF World Bank meeting, how is it?
Well, it's great to be here. And, usually we have maybe 10, 12,000 people. Now there's 34,000 people here. And so I've been very impressed with the way Indonesia has been able to manage such an influx of people. You know, it took a lot of preparation. And with the events in Sulawesi and Lombok, and where we are just devastated for the families of the people who were lost during those two tragedies. But the really good news is that Indonesia is showing that it can respond to disasters and at the same time manage conferences like this. Okay. And so we've been very, Pak Luhut is a very good friend of mine, and he is a person who really knows how to get things done. And so we have great faith in the government to be able to manage this very complicated conference.
I might say that you've experienced firsthand the Indonesia that you've been talking about. There was a quake that happened this very morning. I just wanted to ask, did you realize that? Did you feel that?
Yes. Well, so the bed shook a little bit, and of course the beds don't normally shake in your hotel room. I've actually experienced more shaking in Los Angeles, where my family lives, and immediately, the question was, is there a tsunami risk? What are what's the extent of the impact?
And you got that information.
I got that information right away. My teams were immediately on top of it, and we have plans for every single potential outcome. And so we've even had independent assessments of the stability and how solid the building structures are. And so we feel confident that we have the measures in place to be able to respond if something happens.
Because this is one thing that we were first worried about before coming up to the IMF. Well, we had Asian Games, it went well, and then the IMF, and suddenly this quake happens. But you'd say that there's nothing to worry about, at least for you.
For this earthquake, I think there's been very little damage. I mean, here in Bali, my understanding is there's been some damage in other parts of Indonesia, and of course, we're in constant communication with all of our colleagues in the Indonesian government, because we stand ready to support in any way. I mean, they're doing, I think, absolutely their best in a very difficult situation, and we stand ready to support. But for right now, our teams look at every single contingency and have been working with the Indonesian government. So we feel confident that no matter what happens, we'll be able to respond appropriately.
Okay, there was just yesterday we've heard about the Vice President and also World Bank about being ready for Indonesia, for Sulawesi, and also for Lombok. Indonesia is a disaster-prone area, and World Bank is here focusing on education, on health. How would World Bank, or do you have plans to do projects or fund projects that focus on not just providing or eradicating poverty in these areas, but also poverty in disaster-prone areas? Because there's a lot in Indonesia.
So Indonesia, since Aceh, has been one of the leaders in the world at thinking about disaster risk management. And so when my first trip to Indonesia, I was driving through the countryside, and we actually looked at the Recompact program, where the Recompact program is an absolute innovation in Indonesia, where the communities are involved in rebuilding structures after disaster. And not only are communities more engaged, not only are communities able to build the housing that they want, but the cost is 30% less than if we did it otherwise. And so we're in fact taking lessons from Indonesia and spreading them to other parts of the world. So Indonesia actually has been a leader in disaster risk management. But just in the last 6 to 9 months, there have been multiple disasters. Now, Indonesia is in the so-called ring of fire, multiple faults that it's in the middle of. But the point is, this is an extremely important country, 300 million people. We at the World Bank Group have to figure out ways of supporting countries like Indonesia in responding every time this happens. And so the other things we're looking at are there ways that we can share the risk of disasters in Indonesia with capital markets more effectively. The Philippines has done some very interesting work in doing that they don't take all the risk, they share the risk with the capital markets. I think there are great possibilities, and of course, we have great faith in this government. President Jokowi, I've known him since a few months after he took over. He has been a leader on things like human capital, on things like disaster risk management, and in ways that we are very encouraged by. And of course, Sri Mulyani was my deputy at the World Bank for 4 years, and so we have a tremendous amount of faith in her.
And she has your personal number.
Of course, when she's not happy with something, she texts me at all hours of the day and night. So just know that your leaders have a direct line to us at the World Bank Group.
Okay. Now, with the IMF World Bank meeting, this is a big international event. As we know, we were going to see 17,000. Apparently, it's 33,000 now here involved in the event. We just had Asian Games. What would you say? How would you, from abroad, see Indonesia after what we have done here? Because we're trying our best, to ensure people that we're doing okay. The economy is good, and we are prepared for any single international event that you would lay upon us. Right. What would you say about that?
Well, so far, from my perspective, I couldn't have imagined that it would go this well with so many people. I mean, we really thought it was going to be 15 to 17,000. With so many more people here than we had thought. In my view, it's been going very, very well. And we've been able to communicate seamlessly with the Indonesian team, especially with Pak Luhut. And my great hope is that people will leave here saying, wow, that's the infrastructure there is really quite stunning. I mean, I have to tell you, some of the venues where we're having large events and even small meetings, the venues are just stunning. They're some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. And of course, there's the beach right here. There's the mountains. I think that tourism to Bali will go up. Okay. And as you may know, we're trying to work with Indonesia to build Bali-like resort areas on other islands. Yeah. And my hope is that tourism will be a huge driver of economic growth in Indonesia for the foreseeable future. I mean, I think the possibility of Chinese tourists, of Russian tourists, of tourists from Europe and the United States and everywhere, I think people will go away from this meeting truly stunned at the beauty and the hospitality.
Okay, I hope you would.
Well, I already have been. That's why I always look for excuses to come back and visit Bali and see my friend Sri Mulyani.
All right.